It is a rather fascinating quirk of human nature that every single generation, without fail, believes it is living in an age of absolutely unprecedented progress.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite a universal blind spot, isn't it?
It really is. If you look back at history, the Victorians marveling at the first steam train felt the exact same sense of finality that we do today when we, stare at our glowing screens.
Right. They thought they had crossed the ultimate finish line of human achievement.
Exactly. There is this persistent collective assumption that we have finally arrived at the apex of civilization. And that brings us to the source material for today's deep dive. We are tackling a rather profound piece of philosophical writing today, one that dares to look past our modern gadgets, our soaring economic statistics, and our shiny glass-fronted cities.
Which is quite a difficult thing to do in our hyper-connected world.
It is. But it does so to ask a quietly devastating question for you to consider. Has humanity actually progressed in the same measure as its technological achievements? Okay, let's unpack this, because the text we are looking at today doesn't start by tearing down modern society, does it?
No, not at all. Actually, it does quite the opposite. It begins with this sweeping, almost cinematic acknowledgement of just how far we have come as a species.
Which is a refreshing change of pace from the usual doom and gloom.
It really is. It traces this incredible timeline right back to the beginning. It asks us to genuinely consider the sheer scale of the cognitive and societal leaps we've made. Think of those early human ancestors, initially at the absolute mercy of the elements.
Just trying to survive the winter, really.
Exactly. Just figuring out how to cultivate a patch of land, how to build the first rudimentary settlements, and how to organize themselves into basic functioning societies.
It's a massive leap from cave dwelling to agriculture.
It is. And from there, the text maps out the exponential acceleration of human ingenuity. Later generations began unlocking the actual mechanisms of the physical world. They learned to harness electricity, which, well, it didn't just change technology, it completely altered the biological rhythm of human life.
Right. By essentially conquering the night.
Spot on. Suddenly, we weren't bound by the sun. They built ships that could navigate across entire oceans, expanding the map of the known world, and eventually machines that allowed them to reach the skies.
It is a staggering trajectory when you lay it out like that. And then you arrive at the present day, our modern reality. We are sitting here in this studio, and we can bounce a signal off a satellite and communicate across continents in a fraction of a second.
It's almost mundane to us now, but it's basically magic.
It is. We are quite literally sending rovers to explore distant planets. We are developing artificial intelligence, quantum computers, mRNA vaccines. These are technologies that even our own grandparents could scarcely have imagined, let alone those ancient ancestors tilling the soil.
What's fascinating here is how the text deliberately builds this towering, undeniable monument to human achievement before introducing its core tension.
Right, it doesn't just dismiss the science.
Not at all. It explicitly states that this line of questioning is not intended to diminish the extraordinary accomplishments of science, technology, medicine, or democratic governance. The author is deeply pragmatic about this.
They recognize the objective good.
Yes, they acknowledge that these advancements have genuinely transformed life. They have drastically reduced physical suffering, eradicated diseases that used to wipe out entire populations, expanded our collective knowledge, and, well, opened up possibilities that were once purely the realm of science fiction. The text is not a nostalgic plea to return to the Dark Ages.
It is not just some cynical anti-modernity rant, which is incredibly refreshing. It recognizes that having access to antibiotics, a functional democratic process, and central heating is an objective, brilliant leap forward.
Quite. I don't think anyone wants to give up indoor plumbing.
Definitely not. But then comes that quiet, lingering question you mentioned. Has the human being itself progressed in the same measure as these external achievements? It makes you think of It's like an upgraded version of the classic hardware versus software analogy.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to frame it. How do you mean?
Well, it's as if over the centuries, we have relentlessly upgraded the physical hardware of human civilization. We've gone from a clunky, analog, steam-powered machine to a state-of-the-art, quantum-level superprocessor. The hardware is gleaming. It can process 1 billion calculations a second.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Right, but then you boot up the machine and you realize we are still running the exact same buggy, outdated operating system from 20 years ago. The hardware is brilliant, but the daily experience remains glitchy.
Or an operating system from 200,000 years ago, really. We have taken software that was meticulously coded by evolution for tribal survival, scarcity, and immediate physical threats.
Fleeing from saber-toothed tigers, basically.
Exactly. And we have installed that ancient software into a digital era of infinite abundance and global connection.
It's a complete mismatch. It doesn't just glitch, it weaponizes those ancient fears on a global scale. I mean, we are wired to scan the horizon for a predator, but now we scan the horizon of a social media feed for reputational threats.
Which triggers the exact same biological response.
Right. The threat is virtual, but the spike in cortisol, the anxiety, the tribal anger, that's all very real. The daily user experience of being human remains glitchy, prone to crashing, and incredibly vulnerable to the exact same old viruses.
And that psychological mismatch brings us directly into the historical merry-go-round the text describes. Because if our hardware, our medical science, our agricultural yields, our transport infrastructure, if all of that is so near perfect, why is the human experience still glitch so spectacularly?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. The text points out that alongside all this unprecedented advancement, humanity continues to struggle with a very specific, very familiar list of afflictions: conflict, inequality, loneliness, environmental degradation, corruption, violence, anxiety, and distrust.
It's sobering. When you read that list, it feels like you were just scrolling through the morning headlines on your phone on the train.
It does. But the striking thing is, you could just as easily be reading a dispatch from ancient Rome or a letter from Tudor England.
Right. The scenery has changed, the costumes have changed, but the script is entirely identical.
The text leans heavily into the cyclical nature of history to explain the mechanics of this. History is absolutely littered with grand narratives of progress that ultimately loop back on themselves, simply because the underlying human code hasn't changed.
You mentioned Rome earlier. They thought they had it all figured out, didn't they?
They genuinely did. They believed their aqueducts, their road networks, and their complex legal systems meant they had permanently solved the human condition. They believed they had engineered their way out of barbarism.
But the engineering wasn't the issue.
Exactly. What brought them down wasn't a lack of engineering. It was internal corruption, unchecked greed, and political tribalism rotting the empire from the inside out. We've seen political systems replace one another in endless succession, and economic models celebrated as the ultimate solution to human want.
Only to be completely abandoned when they failed to deliver on those utopian promises.
Precisely. The cycle just repeats.
But hold on a second. I want to push back on this on behalf of our listener, because it is very easy to get swept up in the philosophy and lose sight of the practical reality.
Fair enough. Push away.
Surely, living in a modern liberal democracy with advanced medicine, human rights laws, and the ability to travel the world is fundamentally, categorically better than being a peasant in a medieval feudal system. I mean, I would much rather be alive today with penicillin than in the 14th century. We aren't genuinely saying that nothing has changed or improved, are we?
Well, you'd think that observation breaks the author's argument, wouldn't you? Penicillin and human rights are objectively brilliant things.
They are.
But the distinction the text makes is crucial to understanding the paradox here. The author is not arguing that human life hasn't improved in practical, material terms. The distinction being drawn is between the outer landscape of civilization and the inner struggles of human life.
Ah, okay. The outer landscape versus the inner struggle.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the environment we inhabit versus the mind that inhabits it.
Precisely. The outer landscape has changed unrecognizably. We might not be fending off predatory animals in the wilderness quite as often or dying of minor infections.
Thank goodness for that.
Indeed. But the root issues, the deep-seated greed that leads to corruption, the tribalism that leads to violent conflict, the existential anxiety, the profound loneliness, even when living in a densely populated block of flats in a major city, those remain stubbornly familiar.
Right. It's the same feeling, just in a different setting.
Exactly. The forms of our challenges evolve, but the psychological and emotional root of the human condition remains seemingly untouched by our technological leaps.
That distinction clarifies the mechanism perfectly. So, a medieval king, might hoard gold and land, leading to massive inequality and violence in his realm. Today, a modern corporation might hoard data and market share, leading to a different form of systemic inequality and economic violence.
Spot on. The mechanism is digital and corporate now, not feudal and agrarian, but the human impulse driving it is unchanged.
It's that buggy, scarcity-driven software again. It is absolutely identical.
It is the exact same human impulse, just amplified by far more efficient tools. And recognizing that we are repeating these historical mistakes, despite having infinitely better technology to prevent them, could easily become quite a depressing realization.
It paints a slightly bleak picture, to be honest. Humanity trapped in a sort of gilded cage of its own making.
It really does.
It feels a bit like running on a treadmill. You are sweating, you are moving incredibly fast, the digital display says you are burning calories, but you are not actually getting anywhere geographically. You are just repeating the same motion in a slightly fancier gym.
That's a great analogy. But the text makes a crucial, optimistic pivot right at this juncture. It explicitly states that this observation, this historical merry-go-round, should not be an invitation to pessimism.
Oh, good. We need a bit of optimism here.
It is an invitation to curiosity. It suggests that perhaps the question isn't whether humanity has made progress, because clearly, in the outer landscape, it has. The more important question is whether we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of progress itself.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually shift the metric? Because if progress isn't just a climbing graph of GDP or laying faster broadband cables or putting a research base on Mars, what is it? How do we move the goalposts so that humanity doesn't just survive its own technological capabilities, but actively flourishes?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text challenges the very definition we've been operating under since the Industrial Revolution. It asks a profound question. Is progress merely the accumulation of wealth, power, knowledge, and technology?
Which is what we've been told our whole lives.
Exactly. Or does genuine progress include something deeper that simply cannot be quantified by economic growth or material comfort? For decades, we have fallen into a trap of assuming that if we just get the technological specifications right, if we just automate enough tasks and generate enough wealth, human flourishing will automatically follow as a natural byproduct.
But it doesn't work like that, does it?
Yeah.
We measure success by transactions. GDP is essentially just a measure of money changing hands. If a society is so stressed and anxious that it spends billions on antidepressants and therapy, its GDP actually goes up.
It's a completely skewed metric.
It is. The metric says that society is progressing, but the human reality is that it is deeply unwell. We assume that if everyone has a smartphone in their pocket and a full fridge in their flat, everyone will naturally be ethical, happy, and at peace. But the overwhelming evidence of the modern world loudly contradicts that assumption.
It does, and the text emphasizes that diagnosing this flaw isn't just some niche Western philosophical debate. This is a universal inquiry.
Right, it's not just a problem for one part of the world.
Not at all. It makes a point to say these questions do not belong to any specific nation, culture, religion, or ideology. They belong to every thoughtful human being on the planet. It doesn't matter whether you live in a bustling, hyper-modern metropolis in India, a coastal city in Brazil, a high-tech hub in Japan, or a rapidly developing urban center in Kenya.
It's a genuinely global dilemma.
Whether you are young or old, a quantum physicist, or a primary school teacher, we all share this exact same responsibility to understand what kind of progress actually enables true human flourishing.
I really appreciate that inclusivity. It strips away the geopolitical borders and the partisan politics and just addresses the human being standing at the center of it all. It makes you, the listener, a vital participant in this global conversation, regardless of where you are tuning in from.
It empowers the individual, doesn't it?
It really does. And frankly, it is a massive relief that the text admits it doesn't have all the immediate, neatly packaged answers. It explicitly says, and I love this line, this book does not begin with answers, it begins with an invitation.
And what a necessary invitation it is. It is an invitation to pause amid the relentless, often overwhelming speed of modern life.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
That alone is a radical act today. To deliberately step off the treadmill. To look beyond the daily churn of algorithmic headlines and the cold, hard statistics that we usually use to measure our societal worth.
Yes, to reconsider the assumptions that we have just accepted completely, without question. We have this baked-in assumption that newer always means better, that faster always means more efficient, and that more connection always means more empathy.
But we know from experience that isn't always true.
Right. The text is asking us to put those assumptions under a microscope.
To find genuine human progress, the text suggests we need to draw on absolutely everything at our disposal. We must explore history to understand our cyclical failures. We need human experience, rigorous scientific inquiry, philosophy, psychology, and our own lived lives.
A completely multidisciplinary approach.
We have to synthesize all of these fields together rather than keeping them in isolated, competing academic silos. We cannot engineer our way out of a psychological crisis, and we cannot philosophize our way out of a physical disease. We need the synthesis.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because out of all this synthesis, the text has this one striking line that I think serves as the absolute anchor for this entire deep dive. It says, "The future of civilization depends not only on what we build around us, but also on what we cultivate within ourselves."
That is the pivotal moment of the entire framework. It transitions the ultimate responsibility from the external world to the internal world.
It shifts the focus entirely.
It leads directly to the guiding question that the author promises will quietly accompany every subsequent chapter of their work. What kind of human being creates a truly progressive society?
What kind of human being creates a truly progressive society? That just stops you dead in your tracks, doesn't it?
It really makes you pause.
When you look at how we allocate our resources, the mismatch is staggering. I mean, we spend billions, trillions, really researching how to build smarter cities, how to create infinitely complex supply chains, how to train artificial intelligence to write our emails, draft our contracts, and drive our cars.
The external infrastructure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we spend comparatively pennies on cultivating the ethical, emotional, and psychological capacity of the human beings who are actually going to wield all of this immense world-altering power.
This raises the terrifying concept of technological adolescence. We have engineered our external environment to a degree of almost unimaginable sophistication, giving ourselves the destructive and creative capabilities of a god.
Which is quite a heavy burden.
Yet we leave the internal cultivation of the human mind, our emotional regulation, our ethical frameworks largely to chance, or to the exact same historical trial and error that has repeatedly failed us.
It's absurd when you put it like that.
We are essentially handing the keys to a profoundly powerful, hyper-fast sports car to a toddler and just blindly hoping they will naturally figure out how to navigate the motorway safely without crashing into anyone.
That is a terrifying image.
Yeah.
But it captures the mechanics of our current situation perfectly. If you trace back the list of persistent struggles we discussed earlier, the conflict, the corruption, the distrust, the environmental degradation, not a single one of those is fundamentally a technological problem.
Yeah, not one.
They are all, at their core, human problems. They are issues of human character, human empathy, and human greed. I mean, you can invent the most sophisticated, efficient carbon capture technology in the world, but if the humans deploying it are still driven by unchecked corporate greed, political tribalism, and short-term thinking, the environment will still suffer in a dozen other ways.
The root cause remains untouched.
Right. The technology is just a tool. The hand wielding it is what actually matters.
Exactly. Genuine human progress, according to this philosophical framework, requires a parallel evolution. The outer landscape of civilization must be matched by a deliberate, rigorous inner cultivation of the individual.
They have to move together.
You cannot have a truly progressive society if the individuals comprising it remain internally stagnant, trapped in ancient cycles of fear, envy, and anxiety, regardless of how fast their fiber optic broadband connection happens to be.
So it is ultimately about balancing the equation. The hardware and the software must be developed in tandem. Which brings us quite neatly to how this actually applies to you listening to this deep dive today.
Bringing it back to the individual.
Yes, because it is incredibly easy to sit back, listen to a grand philosophical discussion about the fate of human civilization, and think, well, that is a job for the politicians in Geneva or the tech billionaires in Silicon Valley to sort out. It has nothing to do with my Tuesday morning commute.
But the text is fundamentally democratic in its challenge to the reader. It places the locus of progress squarely within the individual human mind. True progress isn't merely about possessing the latest, thinnest smartphone in your pocket. It is inherently about the quality, the clarity, and the ethics of the mind that is using it.
The software running the user, so to speak.
Right. It is about how you, in your daily interactions, cultivate your own inner landscape. Do you react with ancient tribalism when provoked online, or do you cultivate the patience to understand nuance? That micro-decision, multiplied by 8 billion people, is what actually determines the trajectory of civilization.
That is the crux of it. And that leaves us with a final, rather provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up today's deep dive. We have spent this entire conversation exploring the incredible exponential rate at which our external technology is advancing.
We barely even notice it anymore.
Right, we expect our phones to be twice as fast every few years. We accept that rapid external innovation as totally normal. But what if we applied that exact same expectation to ourselves?
What would exponential internal advancement actually look like in a human life?
Right. If we applied the same rigorous innovation, the same level of funding, focus, and cultural celebration to developing our empathy, our patience, our resilience, and our ability to build community as we do to developing our software updates and our microchips, what kind of world would we wake up in tomorrow?
That is a staggering proposition to consider.
If your ability to listen to someone you fundamentally disagree with upgraded as frequently and seamlessly as your phone's operating system, how utterly different would your neighborhood, your workplace, and your politics feel?
The shift from outward accumulation to inward cultivation might just be the most urgent and perhaps the final frontier of human progress left for us to conquer.
It truly might be. The hardware we have built is undeniably brilliant, but it is high time we focus on writing some better software for ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on this intellectual journey today. It has been an absolute pleasure unpicking these ideas with you. Until next time, keep cultivating, keep questioning those assumptions, and take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.